The inflation problem is not over. The other day, I was speaking to a client of mine after the rates announcement, and he said something along the lines of, oh, those so-and-sos, they didn't drop the interest rates the other day. Can you believe that? And I actually said to him, yes, I can believe that. And it's really surprising to me that everyone else thinks interest rates are just going to go down. I thought I'd take the time out on this video to label 5 of the reasons why I think interest rates are going to be higher for longer. You have to watch the debt, because if interest rates stay higher for longer, then obviously it's going to take up more of your income. Those people with investments that are still negative, especially those guys, they started becoming negative in 2022. It's been a mighty long wait. Let's get into those 5 factors. The first factor I've got is immigration. This might be, a really triggering topic for everyone. It seems to be one of those topics that really divides everyone. But I think if you look at it in terms of an economic point of view, it's quite simple. More people with the same amount of resources means that's going to push the cost of stuff up. So it's obvious that in things like housing, it's going to push the cost of housing up. But it's not just housing. If you look at demand, they're all going to demand stuff they need to live off. It's not only that. If you look at all these people, they demand everything they need to live. And a lot of those things we just can't create more supply. And what that is going to mean is that whatever these people want, whatever we want, if there's a limited amount of it, it's going to potentially push the price up. That is inflationary. I think we can have a reasonable discussion about this without all of the emotion and just label it for what it is. This unhinged amount of immigration growth is not working. There needs to be, I would say, extreme measures based on the extreme amount of immigration we've already got. But the point is that it's going to push up the cost of stuff. It's going to push inflation. The second thing I want to talk about is the cost of energy. Labor government did let's say they put some shells under some cups and moved them around a bit by providing energy rebates. And if you look at the ABS data, it appears as if, the cost of energy has come down quite a lot. And yes, it has, because people aren't paying as much for it. But that's because the government are printing money, which is inflationary itself. And they're paying for people's electricity bills. Energy itself has not gone down. So I would like to zoom out on this topic. Again, take the emotion out of this green energy problem that we're having. Let's call it for what it is. Energy is going up. It's been going up for 15 years. This is the long-term trend. What a lot of people, I guess, undervalue when we're talking about the effects of energy on inflation is a very simple thing. Everything we consume, everything we buy has energy input into that. So if the cost of energy goes up, it's going to be input into the cost of goods. That's naturally what it is. I feel like we still haven't learned our lesson here, and energy is really going to burn us in the coming years. The only caveat to that, basically the promise that we were promised. The caveat is that some sort of technology gets created to make energy super duper cheap. Unfortunately, that does not help the energy companies and anyone that profits from energy, who, by the way, are the people that pay the politicians. So the reason energy is going up, we can argue about that all day long, but the fact is it's going up. Everything else is a lie. Do not come and tell me that some sort of energy is cheaper, green energy is cheaper, and then I come back to you and say, well, if it's cheaper, look at your electricity bills. Because the fact is energy is more expensive. It's a 15-year trend. It's likely to be higher next year. That is inflationary. The next factor is employment. Now, there's 2 things I want to say about employment. The first thing I want to say about employment is that our unemployment rate is actually still really low. I know it's ticked up a little bit in recent times, but it's still really low. Generally in the past, when we're looking at interest rate cycles, interest rates can come down quick if people stop spending. The quickest way people will stop spending is if they fear that if they lose their job, they might not get a job for, let's say, 10 weeks, and therefore they have to stop spending now and they have to save money to put away for a time when they're not employed for 10 weeks. That is like a handbrake on spending. In that event, it allows the central bank, the Reserve Bank, the RBA, to be quite aggressive in terms of cutting rates. At the moment, that's not happening because we all know that if someone loses a job today, they can go out there tomorrow into the market and get another job. so they don't fear losing that flow of income. The second thing I want to add to that is that we have a lot more people employed by government and the public sector now. So it is actually harder. The economy has to be in a way worse position because the government keep on employing people. So for us to get to that point where people fear losing work for 10 weeks, it's going to take a little bit to get there. In actual fact, because we have such low unemployment and the government has employed a lot of people, not just in the public sector, by the way, but also with a lot of infrastructure spending, what that is doing is it's creating a demand. It's creating a skill shortage where the employers have to pay top dollar to get the workers because there's not enough workers. It seems really weird because we've got massive amounts of immigration, yet we don't have enough people to do the work. And if I want to take an opinion out of all of this about not just any government, whether it's left or right, it's that we have been embarking on this aging policy and immigrating skills in for a long time. I'm 43 and I can remember in high school talking about this issue in classes. I guess what I take out of that is for a long time, the people who're supposed to be creating policy for us have failed. I kind of skipped into the fourth factor whilst I was talking about employment, and that is higher incomes. There's one thing I want to say about higher incomes, and there's a lie that's been told to us. It's a myth, and it's been very subtle. They always are. But that myth is that higher incomes is good. The only thing that hasn't been told to us is, okay, if my income goes higher, then someone else's expenses are higher. Because for me to make money, I have to take that money from someone else. One person's expenses are another person's income. Ray Dalio says this quite a lot, and it's a very good point. What's actually happening here is, sure, our incomes have been going up, but the costs of living have been going up at a quicker rate for most Australians. So who's winning out of this deal? Because the average Australian is not winning. They're actually worse off. There's a lot of data out there that shows that it's not just how people feel. You can look at real disposable income if you want to look at that. So who's benefiting here? Because again, if someone has to make a higher income, someone has to spend it. But if people are getting poorer, someone else has to get richer on the other side of it. We all know that saying, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we can look at that stat. It's something like the top 1% income earners in Australia. I want to say 1%, it could be 10%. They own 25% of all the investment properties. So there's a certain particular subsector, let's say, of our economy that is winning out of this situation. And there is everyone else that is losing out of this situation. What's happening out of this situation is that it's forcing costs up. So it's inflationary. Anyway, I'm digressing a bit here. What I wanted to point out is that inflation needs to increase for wages to increase. And the fifth thing that I wanted to talk about is the red tape. And I guess all of these factors, they all kind of influence each other and they all circulate and they compound each other. But the red tape is, we all know it, it's crazy. If you look at developers, there's a reason why we've got a shortage, especially here in Melbourne, and that's because developers can't see profit here. There's twice the amount of people involved in the process for a developer to come up with the finished product. And what that actually does is it expands the timeline that makes the probability that they're going to earn money a lot lower. And what a lot of these developers are doing is just going somewhere else. They're investing their capital somewhere else. And again, this has been happening over a period of time. The other thing about red tape is that, okay, we've employed all of these people in this industry, which is contributing to that lower unemployment. It's moved the needle because all of these people, a lot of these people are getting paid for skilled jobs. They've got uni degrees. They need to be paid accordingly. But again, it goes back and it sucks workers out of the productive part of our workforce and now puts them in a compliance part. It's not productive. It doesn't contribute to making stuff and selling stuff and adding value into the economy. Those 5 reasons are why I think that it's going to be more inflationary for longer. I think people have this thing where, the she'll be right attitude. We had the 27 years of conditioning without a proper recession. I just feel that it's not that way this time. As I always say, time will tell, but I'm looking at this and thinking interest rates are going to be higher for longer. We're going to be in an inflationary environment. I've been thinking this for quite a while. Again, I'll go back to the videos where I've been talking about you need to be careful about how much debt you're in because it's always the debt that gets people. And if it's higher for longer, especially if you're holding investments although it could be for owner-occupied properties. That interest is going to suck the life out of you. Actually, the profits, if you lose, someone else wins, and the profits are the people who own shares in the bank. The profits are the top 1% of wealth earners. That's all I wanted to talk about today. Agree, disagree, like to hear some comments. Is there any other major factors that I've missed? It feels like everything's going up now, so I've probably missed a few things there. Okay, thanks guys. Again, appreciate you if you're still watching. Cheers.